One of the great things about network marketing is you learn to become a masterful storyteller. And the components that you really want to learn how to tell a great story is going to be your story, the company's story, and then the business story. And there's frameworks and different ways that you can learn how to do this. For us, learning the company story and the business story was really about listening to other people do opportunity meetings and just that consistency of hearing it over and over again. It was the same message that everybody was conveying. And so with that repetition, we learned it pretty quick.
Right. Well, and what's interesting about that, and I'm just reflecting on a lot of different things, we didn't have a lot of YouTube videos back then. Actually, I only knew of one. And I listened to that over and over and over again. And I personally sat at my kitchen table and wrote down the entire meeting, which in the end really included all the story information. But listening to, like you said, those Thursday night calls, right? That's what we listened to over and over again.
Yeah, our YouTube channel. I mean, we've literally got dozens and dozens of people presenting these types of stories out there that you can just really start to develop. Okay, I like the way that this person said it, or this matches my personality. From a 10,000 foot overview, in those two parts of the storytelling, we're telling the same story.
Exactly.
And when you think about stories, I really want you to think about, okay, if I was telling a story to a little kid, like a book, their favorite book, why is it that that's their favorite book? And most of the time, yes, the story is funny or it's got some cool stuff in it that the kid likes, but what they're truly attracted to is how you tell the story. And becoming a masterful storyteller. So if you have kids, or think back to when you were a kid, there's probably that one book that jumps out in your mind that you could probably tell most of it word for word right now and thinking about it. And one of them for us is, as our kids were really young, was a story called Mortimer. And it would talk about clang clang, rattle bing bang, gonna make my noise all night. And the dad would yell from downstairs, Mortimer, be quiet. And so the first time that we're telling our kids this story, you're really looking at the pages and reading the words and stuff. But after the fifth night, you can tell that story and you start to create different maybe voices for the different characters, saying it emphatically at the points that, it really is shouting out and things like that. But
so good.
That's the reason the kid wants you to tell the story 5,000 times, is because all of a sudden now it's you telling the story, not you reading the story. And that's what we really want to get you to in telling your story, telling the company's story and the business story, is you're telling it in a format that people are on the edge of their seat. They're wanting to hear what's coming next. It's not just, oh, hey, I started this new thing. It's really cool. I think it would be great. You've got to check it out. Right. Nobody's going to want to join you in that venture or listen to what you have to say. So being excited, being passionate, us talking about when we first got involved, we were super, super attracted to the products because Michelle's dad had died of a heart attack at the age of 42. And that part of her story, her journey is very important and is going to resonate with a lot of people. So when somebody's telling the story, does it evolve? Does it change over time?
Oh, yes. Well, and you just, like you said, you become more excited, more passionate, and in the moment, emotion as well. But I will say, the way that we share the company story and the business story and the product stories today, other than we have new products that we didn't have when we first got started, is literally word for word, except for in that moment if something comes to mind or whatnot. But the company story, the product story, and the business story, the only thing that's really completely evolved is, our story, right?
Your story and your journey. And that should change, right? Because when you initially come in, the reason why you're doing the business is going to be very different than maybe 5 years in.
Totally.
You might have accomplished those goals, or just life changed, situations are different. So that can evolve, and you have to constantly be thinking about, okay, am I still in the same chapter, the same part of my journey?
Right.
And the things that you're really going to want to think about to craft your story is, before LifeVantage, or currently right now, what are you doing outside of LifeVantage? The second part of it, I would write down, what don't you like about it?
Yeah.
Then start thinking about what did you find with LifeVantage that's different, and why are you so excited about where it's headed? So for me, when I was with Citigroup, what I found was the higher I climbed up the corporate ladder, the more time that they expected out of me and the less time I was spending with my family. So almost the exact opposite of what you would want to be rewarded for being successful in the corporate setting. So that's what I didn't like about it. The more I climbed the corporate ladder, the less time I was home with my family. With LifeVantage, what I found was I had a vehicle in our lap that we could create time freedom where we could get to the point that our calendar was around our family first, and we worked in the periphery. Yeah. And why I'm so excited about the future is I do this all over the world, and there isn't one marketplace I've ever set foot in where you go out and randomly ask 100 people if they know about LifeVantage or Nerf2 or Axio, anything like that, that you would find 2 people that'd be like, oh, I know all about that. But what I'm excited about with that part of the opportunity is I know that in the future, maybe it's 3 years, 5 years down the road, it's not going to be a question of if people are upregulating or downregulating their genes. It's going to be how they're doing it. And so we're at the forefront of that, and that's why I'm so excited. So blending that all together to create my story. Hey, I used to work for Citigroup, one of the largest corporations in the world. What I found, though, was in that environment, the more success that I had and the higher I climbed up that ladder, the more time I was asked to be away from my family. And what I found with network marketing was I truly had a vehicle to create time freedom, and I'm more excited than ever right now because I think that that opportunity is just at the starting point, and in the future it's not going to be a matter of if people are upregulating and downregulating their genes, it's going to be how they're doing it. So I took those 4 steps and just combed them together to create my story.
And not super long, right? It's short and concise, but at the same point, it's very meaningful, and it tugs at your heart too, right? Because it's a true deal. I mean, he was gone and it hurt. Like, our daughter pulled at his pants and said, "Daddy, please don't go." And so when you're up in front of the room, or you're talking with a friend at coffee, or, even through Facebook Messenger, any of that stuff, you can feel emotion. And so, drop those little things, like for me, started working when I was 13, raised by a single mom. Like, when people can start relating with you, they're like, ooh, okay, they know how I feel for that. Oh, yes, I totally know, like, leaving, my kids for X amount of time, or, oh, the stressors, or, oh, the rush hour traffic, or, you know what? I've been sick and I've had to take a ton of time off of work. So little things about your personal story to speak into that meeting or whatever, wherever you're at the moment.
Yeah. So learn to tell the story on the business side, learn to tell the company story. Those ones, as Michelle said earlier, they're really not going to change a ton. If you listen to our pre-recorded stuff or you hear us on a live webinar, you're going to hear over and over again. It starts with
duplication is real.
After the ABC primetime video aired, people were excited about what it could potentially do inside their body. The problem was, and it's the same. And I'll never forget one of our mentors, when a few years in, people were questioning, is that still what we're telling people? And her response was, well, think about your kids, okay? When they were born, they have a certain story. And as they were younger, they have a very specific story. It doesn't matter now if they're 5 or they're 10 or they're 15.
Right.
The initial part of their life is the story. And the story is the story is the story. It's always going to be the story. So our company, the ground floor part of it always starts with that ABC Primetime Investigative Report and what happened leading up to where we are today.
Right.
So I love that aspect of it, that once you know it, you know it.
The company's story, you guys, is so powerful. And so when you just share that and people understand, like, wow, this is why you guys are here and this is what's happened, and the world is just learning about it, it's a cool thing.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to be the message for any of this.
Right.
You just have to know where to go to have people hear that information or hear those parts of the stories. And over the course of time, you're going to get more professional. You're going to get more polished at telling those stories. Yes. So don't let you not knowing the story right now impact your ability to get people in front of the information. For example, like the business story. There's a lot of that Michelle probably could tell you from a 10,000 foot overview, but she couldn't get into granular nature of the compensation plan.
Mm-hmm.
But she does know that I have pre-recorded compensation plan videos that she can just send to
Direct
somebody
them.
and
Yes.
say, here's how the business side of it works. Here's 5 videos that Shawn put together.
Yes.
And send them that information.
Yes.
Or she has a pre-recorded video that she might send out to a prospect that has Dr. Melody Redarty talking about the company's story and the products, and then me telling the business story at the end of it. So you don't have to know all of those to get started.
No.
The one thing that I would spend the time right now, though, kind of identifying is going to be your story. Really take the time to go through the 4 steps that we have there as far as what your background is, what you're currently doing, what don't you like or didn't like about it, what you found with network marketing or LifeVantage, and then why you're excited about the future. If you can formulate those 4, it's going to solve a lot of issues and a lot of fear that you're going to have when somebody asks you, what you do. And I'll never forget early on, I didn't have the posture and the belief in this industry to really be strong, and I would always fall back onto, well, I work in the corporate world. I worked for Citigroup or whatever it was, and there's a couple exact moments that I totally remember that if I could have been better at my story, I wouldn't have had that like deer in the headlights look of, oh my gosh, am I going to tell them it's network marketing? Or, what are they going to think? All of that. So if you can craft that story really well, and then practice doing it, it'll serve you.
I was just going to say, so you shared with how you share your story now. So if you were just getting started today with our old story, how would you say it?
Yes.
I mean, when we first got started.
So I think that journey would be...
you're living in that moment right now.
Going back to it, okay, so my background still would have been that I worked for Wells Fargo, had my security licenses, worked with Citigroup. What I didn't like about it is going to still be that same first part of it is, I spend a lot of time away from the people that I love most. I spend the best hours of my day getting beat up all day long fighting fires. And what I found was, an opportunity or a vehicle to change our life.
Right.
And back then, I didn't know that it was going to help us walk away from that in 9 months. I didn't know that it was going to create the type of income or change the lives that we now know it has changed. But what I did know was it was an opportunity or a vehicle to get out of that.
Yes.
And so what I would have felt about my future at that point in time would have been hope. Is hope. I now have hope that there are ways for me to take control back of my time and not let, Wells Fargo or Citigroup or whatever bank I was working with at the time control my time and my schedule and when I'm where.
Yeah, and I think that's a real big point with your story is we all have our stories, and every single person's story matters. Your story matters, and sometimes it's uncomfortable because we become vulnerable. The things that aren't going so well, but I'm telling you, when you're vulnerable to your story, people open up more and they become vulnerable and they want to be more a part of it as well. And so really, really sharing that and giving, you mentioned hope. That is the biggest thing for most people, whether it be products, whether it be business, whether it be the community of people and mission, is they just want hope. And to know that somebody is going to help be with them along with the process of getting to whatever that is really a cool feeling and a blessing.
Yeah. And going through this exercise, I think it's also going to help further concrete the idea of why you're doing this.
Yes.
Because it really does make you evaluate where you currently are and where you want to get.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of people as we get older in life and we get more responsibilities and more things that are holding us into what we feel is a safe and secure life, it makes a good life get in the way of a great life because there's risk and fear of stepping outside of that.
Yeah.
But if you can have in your head that I can continue doing what I'm doing now, but in addition to that, I'm going to also build this and change people's lives, eventually it might get you to the point where you can eliminate things that, are not serving you the best way that they could.
Right. And while you were saying that, I was thinking of Jim Rohn, and we do have this on the website with Carrie Dickey City, and there's this a free downloadable link on this site of Jim Rohn, and he talks about his story, going through that process. So definitely, if you haven't listened to that, listen to that.
So I would take the time, craft your story, know where the tools and resources are for the company story and the business story. And as you hear them over time, you're going to start to be able to roll them off of your tongue like we do without really thinking about it, just because it becomes second nature after you've heard it over and over and over again with the repetition. But this is a very, very powerful part of learning to do this business, this profession, is becoming a storyteller that people want to hear the next thing that you're going to say.
The excitement,
they're on
the
the
passion,
edge of their seat to hear what
the
it
bulletproofness. It's just, and I will say, speaking, you can read your story, you can read your story, you can write it down, but actually speaking it out. So I literally got into my living room and I stood up over here and I spoke it over and over again with nobody here, pretending like people were in front of me. So really, really speak the words and it'll become more comfortable and more fluid.